Hey, so if you've been following AI news recently, you know that a lot of people are saying 2025 will be the year of AI agents. So an AI agent basically is a large language model that's able to use tools to interact with its digital environment. Here's an example. This is Cloud Computer Use. It's a demo project released by Anthropic a couple of weeks ago that showcases the capabilities of their latest large language model to interact with anything on a desktop, the same as a human could. So here you see it browsing to a website and giving a summary of that website. Although it takes forever, so I'm going to speed it up here a little bit. This is sped up times a lot. Here you see it came up with a question to the answer that I asked it at the outset all by itself. So that's pretty cool, right? With minimal human supervision, our agent is able to browse to the right website, run the analysis, and come back with an answer to the question that we asked it. It's also, however, very inefficient because it took about 12 minutes to complete this simple task, which if you just look at the text on the website is around 40, 50 kilobytes. So it's a highly inefficient way of doing things by screenshotting through the entire process. So we're going to see in the rest of this video if we can do better by building our own multi-agent system. And we're going to do so using Cursor, where Claude 3.5 Sonnet will generate all the code for us. So no coding experience is required to follow along with this video. Besides Cursor, we'll use 3 open source technologies: Python, LangChain, and Streamlit. I'm using LangChain because that's the agent orchestration framework I have most experience with, but you can use the same workflow with different AI orchestration frameworks like AutoGen or CrewAI. So the application that I want to build should be able to take all the websites in this list and run analysis on the UI and UX design patterns for AI agents that are being used by the different AI agent startups that are mentioned on this list. So I did some preparation before starting the build, where I created a CSV file of the list and I created a cursor rules file. A cursor rules file basically gives the large language model that we're using in Cursor additional instructions and context within which it will generate the code for the project. I won't go over the whole file in detail. There's a link in the blog post linked up here to with the full Cursor rules file. I just want to point out one thing, which is that for any kind of project, I found that it really helps if you specify explicitly which version of an external library you want to use. So I've done so in the Cursor rules file, doing some research beforehand to figure out which were the latest packages of each of the open source frameworks that we're going to use inside this project. And this is something I highly recommend. I don't think Claude 3.5 is very good at software architecture and design. It will usually use outdated practices and outdated versions of projects if you just let it generate code itself. So yeah, this is something I found out through trial and error. But do your own research. Have a clear idea of what you want to generate before starting the generation process. Because besides the Cursor rules file, there's also .env file, which contains the API keys for Anthropic and Firecrawl, with Firecrawl being the third-party web scraping solution that we're going to use for this project. And the models that I'm using to generate the code are the latest version of Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and as a fallback, older version of Claude 3.5 and Cursor Small. 2 features that we'll be using are Cursor Tab, so you should have this enabled if you want to follow along, and Cursor Composer, which is what we'll use right now. I've already created a prompt, so I'm going to paste it here. As you see, we're not mentioning LangChain or Streamlit in this prompt at all, because we have those in the Cursor rules file, so it should be able to pick up on those. So let's run it and see what happens. So it's generated some. So it's running right now, so we can see there's an agent being generated. Let's see it bigger, so you can see what's going on. So it's running, it's generating all these different files, as you can see. I'm not writing a single line of code, everything is being generated for me by Claude 3.5. Okay, I think we're just gonna accept all and see what's made of it. So if we now close our Composer window and open our project, you'll see that there are 3 files that have been generated. as well as a main file for the Streamlit app. But we have no way of running the application right now. So we need to generate some code to do that. So let's reopen the Composer window and ask it to generate a make file and a requirements file, which we need to manage our dependencies for our project. A make file is basically a way to interact with the file system in a more structured way rather than having to type out commands on the command line each time. So let's see. Let's generate those. Let's see if the requirements make any sense. Yeah, it looks like we have the right versions, the ones mentioned in our cursor rules file. So we're just gonna click accept all. Okay, so we're going to open a terminal window from which we're going to install the Python packages. So now, because we have a make file, we only need to run make vf, and it should, and we can select it for our project as well, so that all the third-party packages that we're installing in our virtual environment, which is a Python environment, will also be available to Cursor. So this can help us look up API specs and do type checking, all kinds of things. Okay, so it's installing dependencies. In the meantime, let's also add some functionality here. So what I'm going to use next is Cursor Chat, because in my experience, Cursor Composer works well to just generate a bunch of codes when you're starting out a project, but then you want to do more targeted changes. Cursor Chat gives more control, in my opinion. But before we do that, let's index the project so that Cursor knows the contents of all the files and it can generate better search queries and better changes. Let's click Cursor Settings, go to Features tab, and then we're going to do Delete Index and Compute Index. So let's see. And while it's indexing, we'll add the changes. So we want to, because we want to start small, we don't want to throw all 150 website URLs at our application that we haven't tested yet. We're going to test it with one single URL so that we can see if it works, if all the agents do what they're supposed to do. So we're going to do Command L, which opens up the chat interface, and we're going to ask it to and we're going to do Command Enter, which lets it use multiple files. So if it needs to make changes to multiple files, it will have the right context to do so. Right, so it's figured out what files it needs to change. So in this case, the main file, which contains the Streamlit app. And it's adding a function to process single websites. And it already, so let's see, let's make these changes first. All right, so we're just gonna click Apply, and it will make the changes, the suggested changes in our main.py file. So we're going to click accept. So one thing that I noticed when I was preparing is that it doesn't get the Firecrawl implementation right the first time. So I'm going to check if that works. Given that this is a sort of a live demo, I'm not checking the code as much as I would otherwise do. So this is definitely recommended. So please visually inspect all the manual code to make sure that it makes sense, as well as run the application as early as possible. So iterate in small steps so you can correct any errors that are introduced by the large language model. So let's see, let me just open up a browser to look up the documentation for Firecrawl. I'm going to go to the documentations page for SKK. Since we're using the Python software development kit, we're going to just add this to Cursor as a documentation. Here we still have the crawler agent as part of our context because that's the that's the file that we have open now. So we're going to add documentation. Here. Just click confirm. So what we're asking it to do here is fix the implementation and also update it, because we want, because we only are interested in screenshots. We only want to look at the design of the AI agents, not of the entire AI agent startup website. So let's see what happens. And we tagged the indexed page with documentation, so it should be able to use that and pick up on that. Let's see. Okay, so it's indeed indexing is almost done. Open crawler agent back up. So it's indeed fixed the import. So this should indeed be firecrawl app rather than firecrawl. See if it's fixed the scrape URL. So let's see. Okay, that works. Accept the changes. So we have our config, we have agents, a crawler. Let's see if it actually works, because our virtual environment is now active. So we can just do make run, and it should start the Streamlit app. Okay, seems to be an error. Let's see if this makes any sense at all. Okay, let's go over the agents, which you should have done as well. I think this is going to be chat Anthropic. Because we made the Python virtual environment available in Cursor, we can now also resolve dependencies directly from our integrated development environment. So let's see if we have any other issues here. It's the same. So we can do tab, which will change it automatically. Also probably will want to... Okay, so that's one thing. Let's see what happens now if we reload. All right. At least we now have a working UI. So this is a simple Streamlit application. Same actually technology as we saw with the cloud computer use demo. This is a very common way to display machine learning projects. Because let's see, so this is Harvey AI. It's one of those AI startups on the list. So let's see what happens when we run it with this analyzing a website. Right, we're already getting quite a few errors. So we're just going to ask Claude to fix it for us. Okay, we're already in the crawler agent, so it's suggested a fix. We're going to wait for it to stop generating. So indeed, so you do need to know a little bit of coding. I mean, you're going to make some manual edits wherever the LLM has trouble figuring out what exactly is going on. You will need to read documentation from time to time, because the LLM has been trained on data up to October. Things change, especially in the world of AI. New libraries and tools are made available practically every week. So that's something that's not going to change. So some software engineering experience is required, but most of it can now be generated with large language models. So that's a big boon for people just getting started. By the way, this is still a long way from best practices for LangChain and LangGraph. So I'll clean it up after this video, but let's see. It did pick up on how to pass image data, which is something I added in the cursor rules. So there's a specific method you need to add to send image data to Claude large language models so it can process them correctly, which is what we need to do because we're looking at design for websites. Same for the meta analyzer. Okay, where are we at? The prompt. Okay. I'm not sure it will do much at this point. I think there's still gonna be some errors, especially in the main file. Not sure why I suggested those changes. Anyway, let's see. Try again. Let's see. So at least it looks like we fixed the crawling issue. Ah, and there we have it. Okay. Right, so we have a first analysis. And of course we need to build on this by making sure that it always finds the right paths with the demos for the AI agents, because that's what we're interested in for this particular research task. But it's a start. And of course I still need to clean up everything manually to make sure that it scales and works properly. I will do some manual edits to the prompts for sure, to make sure that they do exactly what I want them to do. But we've gotten a long way with minimal manual edits, with almost 99% generated code. We now have a small research application we can use to scale up the analyses of different AI agent websites. And this has taken me roughly 30 minutes to write, right, or to generate, which is a lot shorter than what it would have taken to use Claude Computer Use for the same task, because it would take up to 20 hours to analyze all those different websites one by one with Claude Computer Use. So it's more efficient, more cost effective if we write it ourselves at this point, especially with tools like Cursor at our disposal. And that's all. So if you're interested in the results of the research that I'm going to do with these agents, feel free to subscribe to this channel, because I'll be posting the conference talk here once it's available.